All right, great. All right, well, hi, and thanks for coming. I think this is just sort of a good opportunity for us to go through the expectations for the midterm exam. The questions were made available this morning at midnight. Um, so I don't know if you've had a chance to look at them or not, but in this session, we'll go over the questions too. And so the goals are to go over the expectations and then take a look at the questions. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay. All right. And there is our Canvas site. And so let's go ahead and take a look at the midterm exam information section. Okay. All right. And so the exam is worth 140 points. It's 14% of your grade, of your final grade. I think you probably know this, but I'll just say that this this is an open book essay exam. And so, and it's not timed like a quiz. Sometimes students are like, how much time do I have to do it? Well, it is timed. You have about 4 days to do it. Okay. So you received the exam today, and then you have until um Tuesday, October 31st, Halloween, to turn it in at 11:59 p.m. Now, in my other classes, their exam is due on Sunday. But I gave you guys some extra time because not necessarily, I don't think it'll take that long to do the exam. However, you also have the paper coming up, your policy paper. And so I wanted to give you a little extra time in this topic in order to work on your paper as well. So just kind of keep that in mind. Okay. I'm not expecting it should take this long to do your exam, but I wanted to work in some extra time so that you can have some time to work on your paper. Okay. The exam covers the first half of the material. So topic 1 through 6. 6 we just finished yesterday. And there are, as you might have seen on the exam, there are 6 questions, and then you choose 4 to answer. Okay. So when you start your exam, make sure that you save your exam to a hard drive, zip drive, your desktop before you start working on it, because I have had students who start working on their exam and they didn't properly save it, and then they come back to it and they lost all their work. So make sure that you save it. I also like for you to, you have the questions. I like you to use that document to, basically answer the questions. So keep the questions in your exam document. For the ones that you skip, you can either just delete that question or just skip over it and go to the next one. The reason I think it's good to do that because there are like multiple prompts in each of the questions. And I just want to, having the question right in front of you, I think encourages you to make sure like, oh, did I answer all the prompts? It also makes it easier for me to grade too, because the question's right there and I can refer back to it. Now, a lot of times students ask, how long should the exam be? Okay. And as you can sort of see here, right? Let me put the annotate on here. Although I don't really like the annotate, or wait, isn't there we go. I don't like the annotate version on Zoom. It kind of sucks. Students are always like wanting to know how long the exam should be. The answer is, the answer to that question is that the length of the, answer should be whatever it takes to answer the question. Okay. And so if you're a really precise writer, you could do it pretty swiftly. However, students don't like that answer. So what I tell them is ballpark about 2 double-spaced pages for each question for a total of 8 double-spaced pages. It says here maximum. Okay. Well, that it's still kind of ballpark. If your paper's a little bit over 8 pages, that's fine, your exam. But if your exam is like 15, that's too long. So you're going to want to go back and edit it. Likewise, if your, answers are like a page, I unless you're really precise in the way you write, I don't think that that's going to be enough to actually like answer the question. Okay. So ballpark, about 8 pages, a little bit over. Okay. A little bit under. Okay. But a lot over, a lot under. You should kind of go back and evaluate your work. Okay. I do want you to keep in mind that the inclusion of the question doesn't count towards your page total. Okay. And so your page total may be, 11, but that's because there's all these questions in there. You know what I mean? So don't worry about that. Okay. It doesn't count towards your page total. All right. So so let's go on and talk a little bit about what I'm looking for in terms of a really good exam. Okay. Oh, and also submit it as one document. I sometimes have students who like submit individual questions, and that's extraordinarily hard for me to grade. So just submit it as a Word doc. All right. So what am I looking for? What will the best exams do? Well, what the best exams will do is they will answer each of the prompts in the essay question. So as you are answering it, just make sure that you go and answer each of the prompts. And when we take a look at the questions, there's sometimes like critical thinking prompts. And those in particular, I want you to develop your ideas, right? Because, some of the prompts are more descriptive, right? But some are more like evaluating and applying critical thinking skills. So take each of the prompts seriously, and particularly the critical thinking ones, which I'll give you examples of in a second, because that usually differentiates A's from not A's. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is that I'm grading these looking for your ability to demonstrate your understanding of the course material. And there's lots of course material. There's the lectures, there's the textbook, and then there are articles and like podcasts that we've listened to, right? And so if appropriate, well, overall, you should be pulling upon all of the course material categories. You should reference the textbook, reference the articles as necessary or as useful, and reference the videos. If all you're doing is referencing the videos, that's not good. If all you're doing is referencing the textbook in your answers, that's not good. Now, so I want to be like, oh, they like read and listened to everything. Now that doesn't mean for every question you have to be like making sure that there's an article reference, there's a lecture reference, there's a textbook reference. Oh, and course commentary too could be referenced. But taken as a whole, I'll be saying, did they as a whole, use the course material? Okay. Obviously it should your exam, proofread your exam. You've got some time here. So make sure that you're, that's clear and easy to follow. I make, stupid typos all the time. So a few typos, not a big deal, right? But just make sure that when I'm reading students' work and I'm like, I don't understand what they're saying because it's so clunky, like just go back and read it out loud or have somebody else read it so that you know that what your ideas are flowing. And then since you are going to be referencing course material, you do need to cite it. And you don't need a works cited page or anything like that. But if you're referencing a specific idea from the textbook, then just sort of put it in parentheses. Okay. Here, let me get rid of those stupid annotations. Say here, women's right in the USA, page 123, or topic 5, lecture 1. Okay. If it's the article, just use the author's last name, and that should be enough, because I know what you're referencing. Okay. If you want to put the page number, that's fine as well. And so even if you're summarizing ideas, just, make reference to the textbook. Or if you're summarizing something that was covered in a lecture, just put the citation there. Lecture, topic 5, lecture 1. Now, anything that's in direct quotes, as it says here, must be or any direct quotation must be placed in quotation marks. And so anything you directly take from an article, the textbook, or my lectures, okay, verbatim, put it in quotation marks, okay? That direct quotations always need to be in quotation marks. Otherwise, it's considered plagiarism, okay? So make sure that you do that. That don't use, use a big paragraph from a textbook or an article. You know, 1 or 2 sentences of direct quotation is fine. Direct quotations are fine. You can do that. That's good. But just be judicious and sparse in the way that you use those direct quotations, because I mean, it goes without saying, but I'm not looking at your ability to cut and paste. I'm looking at your ability to like actually synthesize material and demonstrate your understanding. Okay. And so that's, you know, kind of the big expectations that I'm sort of looking at. Oh, do note that when it comes to material, don't use external sources. Okay. Everything you need to answer these questions is in our course materials. Okay. Now, if you're like, Hankinson, I really need this to support a point that I'm making. I found a really cool graph or chart or something from something to, you know, just reach out to me and say, is it okay if I add this? Right. And usually I'll just say, yeah, that's fine. But I've sometimes had students who make absolutely no reference to textbook, any of our articles or videos, and they just like look shit up on the web, right? Don't do that, okay? You know, a little bit's okay, but do seek my approval, okay? And then it's due on Tuesday, October 31st at 11:59 p.m. You can work with others studying, like for the materials if you want to. That's totally fine. But the work that you do on the exam itself has to be your own original work, okay? But if you're in a study group or something, that's totally cool to work with others to kind of go through the material. All right, so that is the expectations here. I'm just going to ask, does anybody have any questions about the expectations before we go and actually take a look at the questions themselves? You guys have any questions? Any need for clarification? Well, Leanne, you doing okay? You need any clarification?
I'm good right now.
Cool. Oh, they just pick on people. Josie, you good? Oh, someone's in the chat. Let's see what they said. Oh, everybody's good. Excellent. All right, cool. So let's then switch back to, let's take a look at our questions. So I'll share the screen. All right, and let me get out of that and bring up this. Hold on just for a second. I gotta mute myself. My dog is ripping throw pillows. So my husband and I are both remote workers. So yeah, no, Mr. Poodle has to go in the kennel because he's being Mr. Naughty Boy. All right, so here are the questions. Okay. You answer 4 of them. And we'll go through each of the questions, and then I'll just ask if you have any questions about the questions, okay? So here's question 1. The first one has to do with feminism. And so describe what is meant by the term feminism, making sure to address differences within feminism and how what it means to be a feminist has changed over time, okay? So here, there's lots of different types of feminism that we've talked about in your textbook and in lecture. And also we've talked about the waves of feminism. Okay, so hint, hint, hint. And then thinking about the intersection, so that's the first part. And then thinking about the intersection of feminism and public policy, okay? Describe 3 concrete examples of how feminism has influenced the public policy process in the United States, okay? And so it, you know, it can be, you know, any example that we've covered so far. And so it could be public policy that relates to contraceptives, public policy that relates to you know, reproductive freedoms. It could be, you know, public policy, you know, as an example, talked about Title IX, right? and any other sort of reference that they've made. Okay. And so just, how has, and when we think public policy, it could be a constitutional amendment, and things like that. So just sort of think about, ways in which feminism has influenced public policy. And then the best examples, we'll use examples that are derived from the course materials, court cases, articles, and also that come from different time periods in U.S. history, and identify the specific ways feminism influenced public policy and the impact the public policy had or did not have on American society. And so a lot of those court cases we looked at, I think that was in topic 3. Those might be good examples for that as well in terms of influencing policy. Okay. And so that, is, I kind of like that question because it you demonstrate your understanding of feminism, but then you apply feminism to the impact that it has on the real world, right, on public policy. All right, any questions about question 1?
This is I wouldn't rely on this solely for an answer, but in regards to the how feminism has influenced public policy, do you think it would be okay to reference, for example, like during the 70s and early 80s, we started seeing the prevalence of the voter bloc start to appear a little bit, and how that's gone to influence?
Yeah, I think that would be, we sort of talked about that shift from until the 1980s, women were, equally split between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. But then when the Republican Party in the 1980s gets aligned with the religious right and has a hardcore agenda in terms of being pro-life, that definitely, if feminism does have that impact, because it impacts who we elect, and who we elect, dictates the type of public policy that we have. So yeah, I think that would be a fine example. That would work good. Cool. Any other questions about that? All right, let's move on to the second question. So this is straightforward. Just tell me about the public policy process. And so it's the process of public policy is a vital aspect of American government and politics. In this essay, describe the public policy process, making sure to define public policy and explain the role of policy communities, historical context, and the institutions of American government play in the public policy. Now, here I want you to this is an intersection between the textbook, the Women's Rights in the United States, and how they talk about public policy, but also you have those 2 chapters from Guy, okay? And so I'd be expecting you to pull upon both of those. And then that when you're describing the public policy process, there's clearly steps. And so what I want you to do is, considering the different steps, I always ask questions like this in my classes. Which 2 steps do you find the most important to making policy, and why? Okay. And so that just gives you an opportunity. And again, that's an example of that critical thinking prompt, right? That there's no right answer to that. I mean, you could say, that the problem identification, right? It could be implementation, right? I mean, there's just there's no right answer, but you just need to make a case for which step you think, which 2 steps are most essential. That's a pretty straightforward question. Any questions about that question? All right, hearing none, we will move forward. Get rid of those stupid marks. All right, I don't know why that's so dang clunky. This is one of my favorite questions. And so we covered Reed versus Reed, Frontiero versus Richardson, Craig v. Boren, and United States versus Virginia. Okay. And, I just love, I teach civil liberties, and I'm totally in the Supreme Court. So, I love reading about the evolution of those cases and the impact that it's had on, feminism and our understanding of gender equality. And so I want you to pick 2 of these and say which of these 2 cases, which 2 of these 4 cases do you think are most important to the in the effort to further gender equality in the United States? And again, that's kind of a critical thinking prompt, right? There's no right answer, okay? There's an answer. You could say Frontiero and Virginia. You could say Reed and Craig, right? I mean, there's no right answer, but you make an argument for why you think those are the most important, okay? And then and so when you, I think one of the things that I think is helpful for helping you develop your critical thinking skills is to say, okay, you pick those two, but why those two? Like if you picked Reed and Frontiero, why didn't you pick Craig or United States versus Virginia? So keep that in mind. You know, why these two and not the others? Explain. And then in your answer, make sure to describe the main facts of the case, the decision of the court, and the general importance of the case to gender equality. Okay. And so really sort of like first, like if you say, I'm picking Reed versus Reed and Craig versus Boren. Okay. And then you'd say, like, briefly tell me what Reed versus Reed is about. Okay. Who the main players are, you know, what Mrs. Reed was angry about, right? She felt like she was harmed, and she was. What the question before the court is, and how the court ruled. Okay. And, you know, you don't have to give me tons of details, just, you know, based on what you read in the textbook. And then after that, then you explain, I picked this case because as being one of the most important case, and here's why. Okay. And sort of like two parts, right? Describe the case and then make an argument for why that is one of the most important cases of the four. Any questions about that question? Very cool. The question 4 is about women's suffrage. And sometimes students get confused on this. So let me just make clarification. So as we know from our reading that both men and women did not support the ratification of the 19th Amendment. For gosh sakes, it took a long time for that amendment to get ratified. So it's no doubt that it wasn't just men who were against it. Women didn't want it either. And so you read that article about the antis, right? Not like anti-M, but like the antis, those who are against. And so describe what their beef was, right? What are the reasons for opposing ratification of the 19th Amendment? And then of those reasons for saying hell no to the 19th Amendment, which ones do you think would have been most politically persuasive in light of the prevailing norms and values of the early 20th century? And so go back to the early 20th century, think about gender norms, think about social norms at that time period, right? And then here we are being asked to ratify the 19th Amendment. And so, you know, say, which do you think would have gotten the most political traction to say, yeah, it's not a good idea. We shouldn't ratify this. Okay. And then obviously, you know, there's the articles about that I would expect you to reference in answering that. Okay. And this is, I think, where students get confused sometimes. Next, oops, put the annotation on. Next, describe the two major reasons, okay, as outlined in the textbook in the lecture. And in fact, you sort of had a short answer question about this on one of your quizzes, okay? And so there were two reasons for why the 19th Amendment should be ratified, okay? And so first, describe those two major reasons. And then, given the time period, which of these two reasons do you think would have been most effective in persuading people to support the 19th? Okay. So I'm kind of asking you to do two things there. And I think sometimes students can get a little confused by that. I'm asking you to say, what argument do the antis make? And which did you think would be persuasive for not ratifying? And what are the two arguments made in favor of ratification? And in your opinion, which is the one that you think would be most politically persuasive to get people on board to ratify the 19th Amendment? Okay. So hopefully that kind of clarifies it a little bit. Do you have any questions about that question? All right, hearing none. The next two have to do with topic 6. And so the first one has to do with the different phases of contraceptive policy. And so describe the phases, including the historical and judicial factors that shape these definitions. and the way these definitions of contraceptives impacted access and how the way these definitions impacted access to contraceptives. Okay. And then given the right to use contraceptives, given that the right to use contraceptives is predicated on the constitutional right to privacy established in Griswold, what impact do you think the Dobbs decision will have on access and affordability of contraceptives? Do you think the court would overturn Griswold? Because remember, Griswold is the case that says you have a constitutional right to privacy, and that includes privacy in the marital bedroom and then later in the singleton's bedroom to use contraceptives. That's their business, and government shouldn't get involved in it. Coming out of Dobbs, as we talked about, there's some question about whether or not the right, I mean, Alito, Thomas, maybe even Amy Coney Barrett, maybe even Gorsuch, they don't think that the right to privacy is in the Constitution, right? Because it's not directly enumerated. I don't think it's found in the 14th Amendment due process clause, okay? And so in Thomas's dissent in Dobbs, he said this could open the doorway for just getting rid of other rights that are predicated upon the right to privacy. So even though maybe they could do that constitutionally, do you think that would happen? Do you think that the court would go there, right? Court doesn't always have to go where they, where people are asking them to go. So just something to sort of think about. So here's where we've been with contraceptives, right? And really for the most part where we are, we still have the right to use contraceptives. But some have worried whether Griswold is on the chopping block post Dobbs, okay? And I just sort of want you, again, this is sort of that critical thinking piece of that. So any questions about that? Okay. And then the final piece is talking about the evolution of abortion policy. And so from really Griswold that establishes the right to privacy, Roe that extends the right to privacy to abortion, and then Casey that reaffirms Roe, okay? I want you to describe the evolution of abortion policy in the United States prior to the Dobbs decision. And then the best answers will describe how and why abortion policy has changed and the role that key Supreme Court cases, Griswold, Roe, Casey, played in this evolution, okay? And so we talked about Roe in class, but we didn't talk a lot about Casey in class, Planned Parenthood versus Casey, but that's in the textbook. And so I would expect you to obviously reference that in this. And then following the decision in Dobbs, women and others who can get pregnant no longer have the constitutional right to an abortion, returning abortion policy in the United States to pre-Roe status. And then Taylor, the author of Abortion is About Freedom, Not Just Privacy, that you just were writing about in your discussion post, considers the overturning of Roe a direct assault on the liberty of women. And, she has this quote in her article: "The right to abortion is an affirmation that women and girls have the right to control their own destiny. Without the ability to control when, where, how, and if one chooses to become pregnant or give birth, no other freedom can be achieved," okay? It's a pretty strong statement. And so in this, I just want you to explain what that quote means, and then referring to the article and any course material that might help you develop that explanation. And then the critical thinking piece. Do you agree with Taylor's assertion? Why or why not? And explain your answer. And there's no right answer to that, okay? And so, maybe think about the other freedoms that we have as Americans, right? The right to free speech, to worship, the right to be free from, unwarranted search and seizure, and I know if you need kind of a refresher on Bill of Rights or whatever, just, reach out. But I mean, we're all Americans, so we kind of know what our freedoms are, right? And so there you have it. Any questions about question 6? All right, let me stop the share. So check that out. You got yourself an exam. Should be fun to work on. You're probably all like, but I mean, hopefully it's giving you some stuff where you're not just regurgitating, you are demonstrating knowledge and describing, but it gives you a chance to sort of think critically about these concepts. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to be the irritating professor who just goes that. Alana, do you have any questions? You good?
Sorry, my microphone was acting funky for a minute there, but actually, let's see if I can remember which question it was here that I had thought on. I think it was regarding the. Sorry, I took notes here, and I'm realizing I can't read my own handwriting. Regarding the question of judicial factors, I think it was in question 3?
Okay, yeah,
Uh, let's see.
the cases
Can
question.
we yeah. Can we talk about, obviously, so I'm assuming that's referring to appointments on the court, the current, who's on the court, how it's been shaped.
You mean like the Reed versus Reed, the Frontero case? So I guess I would say that maybe not focus so much on who's on, but you're sort of saying like, what are some factors that might have led to these kinds of outcomes in the case? Yeah, I think that would be fine. Right. I think that would definitely be fine because I mean, you look at Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she argued Craig in front of the Supreme Court, and then she wrote the United States versus Virginia majority opinion. And so one might say, that sort of the influence that those shifts in judicial appointments might have had on outcomes. I think that would be fine. That'd be good.
Okay.
Okay. Alma, do you have any questions?
No, I'm all good. Thank you for going over it.
Okay. Ava?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Bridget, you good?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Lillian? All right, we'll assume you're good. Bridget, do you have any questions?
Oh, sorry. No, I don't have any questions.
All right, cool. All right, well, that being the case, thanks a lot for attending. I'll post this recording on the website for others to take a look at. And like always, I'm around, email, text. If you want a Zoom meeting, I mean, I can't answer the questions for you, but if you need clarification, just reach out. I'm here to help, okay? All right, good seeing y'all. Talk to you later.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.